In early 2025, the United States made headlines around the world by announcing the full restoration of military aid to Israel, a move that had been anticipated for months but still sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. After a period of uncertainty and partial withholding, the U.S. government decided to resume its robust support, signaling a renewed commitment to its long-standing ally in the region. This decision ended months of tense negotiations and speculation as Israeli military warehouses that had stood half-empty were once again filled with advanced weaponry, ammunition, and critical supplies. Soldiers received new equipment, and the sense of relief among Israeli defense officials was palpable. But this was more than just a policy adjustment, it was a bold, unmistakable signal to the world. The United States was reaffirming its alliance with Israel in the clearest terms possible, shifting the region's strategic balance and sending a message to both friends and adversaries alike. For Iran, this move was nothing short of a provocation. Tehran's leadership viewed the restoration of aid as a direct threat to their influence and ambitions in the Middle East. Within hours, Iranian officials escalated their rhetoric, issuing stern warnings of retaliation and predicting a new wave of regional instability. The Iranian parliament convened emergency sessions, and military leaders appeared on state television, vowing to respond decisively. The U.S. decision was interpreted as a direct challenge to Iran's regional ambitions, pushing the already fragile relationship between Washington and Tehran closer to the brink of crisis. Both sides began to mobilize, with military assets moving into position and intelligence agencies on high alert. The shadow war between Iran and Israel, long fought through proxies, cyber attacks, and covert operations, now threatened to erupt into open confrontation. Militias aligned with Iran stepped up their activities, and Israeli defense forces braced for possible attacks. The international community watched with growing anxiety. World leaders called for restraint, fearing that a single miscalculation could ignite a wider conflict. Newsrooms buzzed with speculation, and diplomatic channels were flooded with urgent messages. What was intended as a move to reassure an ally instead lit a fuse in one of the world's most volatile regions. Flashpoints across the Middle East became even more dangerous, and the security of vital energy corridors was suddenly in question. The question was no longer if Iran would respond, but how and when. Iranian military leaders met behind closed doors, weighing their options and preparing for a range of possible actions. The answer, it seemed, would soon target a vital artery of the global economy, the Strait of Hormuz, through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply flows. Any disruption here could have catastrophic consequences for global energy markets. As oil prices spiked and financial markets trembled, the world braced for a confrontation that threatened to send shockwaves through economies from Asia to Europe and beyond. Investors and governments alike scrambled to prepare for the fallout, all of it triggered by a single pivotal decision, a decision that would reshape the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East, and perhaps the world, for years to come. Iran's response was swift and resolute, sending a clear signal to the world that it would not back down in the face of mounting pressure. It threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil passes every day, making it the globe's most critical oil choke point. Iranian officials and IRGC commanders did not mince words. They declared that if Iran's security was threatened, they would block all shipping through the strait, effectively choking off a vital artery of global energy supply. This was no bluff. Satellite images and intelligence reports showed Iranian naval forces mobilizing rapidly, preparing fast attack craft, deploying anti-ship missiles, and readying coastal defenses for immediate action. The message was unmistakable. Iran was ready to act decisively, and its military was on high alert, prepared for any escalation. Even the mere threat of a closure sent shockwaves through global markets. Oil prices spiked instantly, and the prospect of a prolonged disruption loomed over the world economy, threatening to upend global trade and energy supplies. Iran's strategy relies on asymmetric tactics, mines, missiles, and swarms of small fast boats, to turn the strait's narrow geography into a deadly trap for any adversary, making any military intervention risky and costly. By threatening the strait, Tehran aimed to force the world to reconsider its stance, using the global dependence on oil as powerful leverage in its geopolitical struggle. Insurance costs for tankers soared overnight, and shipping companies scrambled to reroute vessels, bracing for the possibility of conflict and the enormous financial risks involved. The Strait of Hormuz became the flashpoint of a dangerous standoff, with warships from multiple nations patrolling the waters, each side watching the other for any sign of aggression. Iran's gamble risked plunging not just the region, but the entire world into chaos. The threat of open conflict loomed large, and the consequences could be catastrophic. The stakes had never been higher. The world watched anxiously, knowing that a single miscalculation could ignite a crisis with far-reaching consequences for global peace and prosperity. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, is one of the most strategically significant waterways on the planet. Despite its modest size, this channel serves as a vital artery for the global economy, connecting the energy-rich Persian Gulf with the vast expanse of the open ocean. It is, without question, the world's most important oil transit route, acting as a lifeline for both producers and consumers across continents. Every single day, nearly 21 million barrels of oil, an astonishing 1/5 of the world's total oil consumption, are shipped through this narrow channel. This constant flow of energy fuels industries, powers vehicles, and keeps economies running from Asia to Europe and beyond. The Strait of Hormuz is the only sea route from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, making it absolutely vital for major oil-exporting nations like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and Iraq. For these countries, the strait is the gateway to global markets. But it's not just oil. About a third of the world's liquefied natural gas also passes through here, making the strait essential for meeting the world's growing energy demands. To protect this critical passage, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, along with allied navies, patrols these waters around the clock, ensuring freedom of navigation and deterring threats to shipping. Any attempt to close or disrupt the strait would be a direct challenge to global security, potentially sparking international crises and sending shockwaves through energy markets worldwide. While there are alternative routes, such as pipelines that cross deserts and mountains, none can match the sheer volume and efficiency of shipping oil and gas by sea through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's control of the northern shore gives it enormous leverage over the world's energy supply. The country has repeatedly threatened to close the strait in times of tension, raising fears of global energy shortages and price spikes. The mere threat to the strait's security can send oil prices soaring and unsettle financial markets, making it a critical concern for every nation's economic stability. That's why, whenever tensions rise in this region, the world watches with such alarm, knowing that the fate of a narrow waterway can ripple across the globe. As tensions rose, intelligence revealed Iran's preparations to deploy naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Mines are cheap, deadly, and hard to detect, enough to halt shipping with just the threat. Clearing them would take weeks, paralyzing oil flows and global trade. Insurance costs soared, and the region was declared a high-risk zone. Even without a single mine laid, commerce slowed as captains weighed the risks. The presence of U.S. and Iranian forces in close quarters raised the risk of accidental conflict. The world's most important waterway had become its most dangerous. A closure of the Strait of Hormuz would trigger an economic shock. Oil prices could double or triple overnight, fueling global inflation and recession fears. Energy exporters would lose vital revenue. Importers like China and India would face crippling shortages, stock markets would plunge and supply chains would seize up. The crisis could spark domestic unrest and strain international relations. The mere threat rattled markets. An actual blockade would be catastrophic. The world's economic heartbeat depended on a single vulnerable choke point. As the crisis peaked, the White House made a dramatic announcement. The president revealed a secret mission, Operation Midnight Hammer, claiming U.S. Special Forces had sabotaged Iran's mine-laying capabilities. The operation was hailed as a triumph, averting disaster and restoring confidence in global markets. Oil prices fell, and the administration's narrative projected American strength and resolve. Supporters praised the president's leadership, calling it a textbook example of preemptive action. But questions soon emerged. Details were scarce, and Iran denied any such raid occurred. Journalists and analysts found little evidence to confirm the official story. The world was left to wonder what had really happened in the Persian Gulf. Was it a genuine victory, or a carefully crafted narrative? The White House's triumphant story soon faced skepticism from within. Pentagon sources admitted an operation had been attempted, but doubted its sweeping success. They warned that Iran's capabilities were resilient and likely intact. The gap between political spin and military reality fueled public doubt. Was Operation Midnight Hammer a real triumph, or just a political maneuver? In an age of misinformation, trust in official narratives is fragile. The crisis subsided, but questions about truth and transparency lingered. In global power struggles, credibility is as vital as strength.